Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is harnessing the power of social media for real estate investing. In today's digital age, social media has become an indispensable tool for businesses to connect with their target audience and expand their reach. Real estate investors in particular can significantly benefit from leveraging social media platforms to grow their business. Here are 5 tips highlighting the importance of using social media as a powerful asset for real estate investors. Number 1, embrace the digital frontier. Social media provides real estate investors with an unparalleled opportunity to amplify their presence and establish a strong online brand. By actively engaging with potential clients, industry professionals, and communities on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, investors can showcase their expertise, build credibility, and attract valuable connections that can lead to lucrative investment opportunities. Number 2, expand your reach. Social media platforms have billions of active users worldwide, creating a vast pool of potential leads and networking opportunities. By consistently sharing valuable content, such as informative articles, property listings, market insights, and success stories, real estate investors can captivate a larger audience, including passive investors, partners, potential sellers, and aspiring property buyers. Number 3, leverage visual storytelling. Real estate is a visual industry, and social media excels at showcasing properties through images, videos, and virtual tours. Investors can leverage this power by utilizing visually appealing content to highlight their current projects, past successes, and the potential of investment properties. Number 4, stay current with market trends. Social media platforms are brimming with real-time updates, news, and trends. By following industry influencers, reputable real estate organizations, and local market experts, investors can stay well-informed about changing market dynamics, emerging investment hotspots, regulatory updates, and potential risks. This knowledge empowers investors to make informed decisions and adapt their strategies accordingly, ensuring long-term success. Number 5, track and analyze performance. Most social media platforms provide analytic tools that offer valuable insights to your content's performance, audience demographics, engagement rates, and more. By analyzing these metrics, real estate investors can measure the effectiveness of their social media efforts, identify trends, and refine their marketing strategies to maximize results. To wrap this up, social media has revolutionized the way businesses connect and engage with their target audience. And real estate investors should embrace this transformative tool. By utilizing social media platforms effectively, investors can build their brand, expand their network, access a wider pool of opportunities, and stay at the forefront of market trends, ultimately accelerating their success in the dynamic world of real estate investing. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us return guest Maria Acosta. After watching numerous flipping shows on HGTV, Maria became infatuated with real estate and wanted to learn how she could fix and flip houses. She attended a free seminar in the Dallas-Fort Worth area hosted by two of her favorite HGTV stars. She ended up investing over $40,000 into her real estate education. She bought her first flip in February of 2015 and made over $15,000. Since then, she has completed over 40 real estate transactions, including fix and flips, rentals, and wholesale deals, all part-time around her full-time job. Well, fast forward a bit, Maria finally quit her full-time job on November 24th of 2021 and has been doing real estate full-time ever since. Maria and her team are dedicated to providing solutions to homeowners in distress. It is my pleasure to have her back on the show, so welcome, Maria.
Thanks, girly. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. I picked social media as my badassery bestowment because you kick ass at social media. I especially like the little desk calendar thingy, the block thing that is, I guess it's in your closing attorney's or title company's office.
Oh, yes.
I know that sounds so silly, but you always capture, I'm getting a new deal or I'm signing something else. And it has a little calendar on there. It's blocks that you can move around. So I always look for that. I'm like, damn, that girl is killing it. She's not cheating because it's a different date on there every time.
That is so funny because actually I had a closing yesterday and we were signing a different room. And I told my girl, like, hey, we need the calendar, bring it out. Because I wear, my same shirt. We buy houses. So I want to make sure, people know it's not, the same day over and over again. Like, no, it's a different day. We're doing things.
Because you are a total badass. You are killing it. So you have 20 rental doors now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
And where are they all located?
So between DFW, so Dallas-Fort Worth, Cleveland, Ohio, and then Warren, Michigan.
Wow. Why Warren, Michigan? I know you lived in Cleveland.
Yeah. So it's funny because going back to the HGTV thing, when I did their program back in 2014.
And who's they? Who's they, by the way?
So the show that I was obsessed with was Flipping Vegas with Scott and Amy Yancey. So I did their program. And when I was at the session, so Jen, the program, like they showed us how to do a ton of different things, but in order for the program, they showed us how to increase our credit card limit. So girl, I had 3 credit cards, $30K each in credit lines, 0% APR, so no interest, for 12 months. So I felt like, I have some money. Let me do something with this. So I bought the program. So that's where I spent, the 40,000. And then you're in a room full of other investors that are just like hyped and wanting to do stuff with real estate. So at the program, they had a company there that was selling turnkey rental properties to the students. And at the time, they happened to be focused in Michigan. And so I didn't select Michigan because I had done any extensive research and, any stuff like that. Basically, it was because this is where that company was buying properties. I had some money. I thought I had some money, with those credit cards. And so I was like, oh man, let me see if I can buy something. So I was browsing through a lot of the different options that they had. And Jen, I bought a duplex, sight unseen, just kind of believed everything that these people told me. Yeah, it had a tenant in there, cash flowing. So I put down another $25,000 for the duplex in Michigan. So that's how I ended up with the Warren, Michigan deal. Completely random, but that's how the journey started, essentially.
So is it still cash flowing?
Yeah. So I've paid it off at this point, which that was another crazy story too. So paid it off and still cash flowing, still own it. Yeah.
Well, every time I get to see you, I learn more about you. And I thought you were cool as hell the first time I met you. Were we in
Mexico,
Jamaica?
Right?
We were in Cancun. That's right.
Yes.
And we were at a conference. My friend Terry Thayer used to run a program called TAB, the absolute best retreat for real estate investors. And man, it is great. You go for a week. You listen to speakers during the day, but then from like 1 o'clock on in the day, you are hanging with other people and networking. And I can remember you were sitting at a table and we were all going around introducing ourselves and you stood up and was like, just commanded this presence. I was like, damn, I like her already. I'm like, I have to stand up from now on whenever I introduce myself. So, But something I learned about you this time is, well, give us a little background. So you came from the accounting industry and you got your master's degree. Is it accounting? Should I say accounting or finance? Really finance?
Finance. So actually in school, I studied both accounting and finance,
Okay.
but girl, when I was taking those accounting classes, because at first accounting was the main focus, I started taking accounting classes though. I was like, I am not going to survive this in the real world. So I added finance as a major in college just to give me something else. And I ended up taking more of the finance route when I graduated.
So you got your master's and then you're working in corporate America and then you started flipping houses while you're working full time. So there's a lot of listeners out there who may be sitting in their car, driving to their job, their job, and wishing they could get out of it. So how did you make that transition from corporate America to running your business full time?
Yep. So, I mean, it took a lot, Jen, to be honest with you, just because one, the people that I started hanging out with, all mostly real estate investors, and a lot of them doing it full time, they were the ones that helped me slowly change my mindset. And it's interesting because a lot of times other people see greater things in you than you do in yourself. So I think I just wasn't confident to like take that step and just leave my corporate job, even though I had been doing some flips. But I think hanging around with the right people. Also, too, I started focusing more on mindset. So I have a mindset coach that started, a couple years ago. And so, we read the book a lot, Think and Grow Rich. And so, listening to things like that, again, you just start slowly thinking differently. But I think overall for me, since I'm such a calculated person, I wanted to have a game plan. So I said to myself, all right, girl, if you're going to make this whole flipping thing work, then let's make sure you're setting yourself up for success. So being in corporate, you're so used to, or just having a job in general, you're so used to that, consistent income coming in. And I knew that if and when I transitioned to real estate full time, that wasn't necessarily going to be a thing. So I tried to think, okay, what would make me feel comfortable with, maybe not having a paycheck or something coming in for a month or two, or, whatever it might be. Sometimes it takes several months to complete some of these deals. You might not get paid for a little bit. And so what I did is that I just saved up, enough money where I felt comfortable, like, okay, this is cool. So honestly, Jen, what I did is that, all right, Maria, if stuff hits the fan, if you could live on $45K a year, then you're going to be good. So essentially what I did right before I quit, I saved up $90,000
Wow.
in my savings account. So that way, if for whatever reason, like the market took a dump or I wasn't doing any deals, then I at least had almost in my mind 2 years, worth of income in my account. And it's interesting because I did another podcast and I was talking about it and they're like, man, you felt like you needed to have that. And I don't know, everyone has their thing. Maybe some people would have just been cool with 3 months worth of savings. And I mean, that might be the right thing for that particular, person. But for me, like, I don't know, I'm always thinking super long term. So I was like, all right, girl, 90 G's in your account and, let's hit the ground running. So ultimately, again, the people I was surrounding myself with, just changing my mindset and also to having kind of like that savings. So just in case stuff didn't work out, I wasn't freaking out. So,
well,
yeah.
Excellent advice. Because there's a lot of people and I coach for an HGTV star, Tarek El Moussa. And, there are students that come in that want to quit their job so fast. And so when you started in 2015 and then you ended up quitting in 2021?
2021. Yeah.
So that's a long time there to be doing, juggling both of these, a full-time job and really a full-time real estate job as well. So, but we don't call it a job. It's our passion.
Yes,
so, in addition to that, and this is what I learned, so thank you for that background, but you went to a high school and they had a special program. I want you to explain this, but you now give back to this, which is what started you on your financial education portion. So tell us about the scholarship that you contribute to.
Yes, ma'am. So the program is called the Academy of Finance. It's actually a nationwide program, but not all the high schools have it out there. I hope and pray that at some point they do, because I think everyone should have this as a foundation. So that's essentially what introduced me to business, accounting, finance, personal financial planning, and things like that. So it's a program that I had to apply to, I think when I was in like 10th grade. And it's the last 2 years, of when you're in high school, 11th and, 12th grade. And I learned so much. We had to do presentations on companies and different things like that. When I was in high school, Jen, I actually worked, for McDonald's. That turned into like almost a 5-year career because, girl, I would have stayed at that job, I think, had I not left, for college. But it was really cool. It was a fun experience. And so in the Academy of Finance program, I did this entire presentation on McDonald's, like talked about all their financials. And so it just taught me a lot going, through experiences like that. So I was very thankful in doing that program just because I know one of the biggest books that a lot of investors talk about that made a huge impact on them was the book by Robert Kiyosaki.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yep, exactly. And so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in 11th grade, but, kind of how you and I were talking a little bit earlier, I think because I was forced to read it like as an assignment, it didn't have the same impact on me because I wasn't ready to receive it. I just saw it as, okay, great, I have to read this book and contribute in class and stuff like that. But yeah, I read that book pretty early on. And so one of the cool things about the program is that, after the 2 years and everything like that, and this wasn't something that I really knew when I first joined the program, is that they like to give back to their students. And so, we're all getting ready to graduate high school, about to go to college. And so I remember it was senior awards night or whatever it was that they called it. And I ended up getting a scholarship, from the program for like $1,000. And Jen, that like changed everything just because I was not expecting that whatsoever. So to actually receive something when you have no expectations, like that just, made my day. And also it's just had an impact on me ever since. So basically, every year I always try and give back to that scholarship program as much as I can, just because, again, I was just extremely appreciative that, that was even a thing. So I don't know. I was just very, very, very thankful. And yeah.
Well, I'm sure those students are thankful for you, and what an impression you are leaving on their lives as well by doing that and going out there and using your success to give back to the community. I just love it. I didn't think I could like you anymore, Maria. So I have a quick shout out to myself, by the way. This is the start of my 4th season of this podcast. Yes, my anniversary, I started in 2020, August 5th, and this one is getting released August 7th, I think. Yes, August 7th. And nice. This is my 4th season. You're my episode 160, and I couldn't imagine a better guest. And we are going to jump into the podcast here. So going back to social media, you had a post recently, and the title of this podcast is Past Project, but this is actually a current project. But how you acquired it is what we are really going to talk about today. And I think it is so important and such a great tool for the listeners to, if they're considering doing subject to. So we are going to break it down and really get into the weeds here of how you created this deal and everything that you went through to get it. So I'm just going to hand it over to you. Tell us how you got this subject to deal. And first of all, what is subject to?
Yep. So subject to is essentially purchasing a home, and they say subject to because it's subject to the existing mortgage. So essentially you're taking over someone's mortgage payment. So the mortgage is staying in place under their name, but we get the title transferred over to our name. So we own it, but the mortgage stays in place under the previous homeowner's name.
Okay. You can't just snap your fingers and make that happen. What legal process do you have to do so that this is more like legit? Because you are owning the house, but really the payments are staying in their name. So explain how you set that up.
Yep. And so my process has kind of changed a little bit just because initially when I was first doing subject twos, I would, just do everything through our title company. They would put the property, or my LLC would be the owner of the property. So one of the things that we're doing now is that we're actually buying the homes under a trust, a land trust. So for example, the property that we just purchased, 7900 Laura. So instead of it being owned by, XYC LLC, which that would, possibly drop a red flag with the lender. It's like, wait a second, Mark and Debbie are no longer the owners. It's who's XYC, LLC or whatever. So we put it under a land trust, and we name the land trust 7,900 Laura. So it may still draw some, red flags potentially because, again, the title has changed. It's no longer under, Mark and Debbie, but, it's sometimes not as not such a big flag. And so what we do then is that when we're closing on the property, so with the trust, you have beneficiaries. So the owners, Mark and Debbie, are going to be, the beneficiaries. But what we do is that right when we're closing, we then have the current beneficiary, so Mark and Debbie, assign their interests over to me.
Oh, wow.
So then I am now the beneficiary of this trust. And so if the lenders ever reach out and ask like, hey, we see that 7,900 Laura is the owner of this property, this trust, who are the beneficiaries? Because they want to make sure it's still, the previous owners because the mortgage is still under their name. So what we would do is just send them those original documents of them being the beneficiaries, but I wouldn't send them my documents of how they transferred over their beneficial interest over to me. So that's one of the things that we're doing now. So putting it in a land trust, number one. And then also too, one of the biggest things that can potentially drop a red flag with lenders is when it comes to the insurance. So you want to make sure that if you are buying a property subject to, so usually we get a new insurance policy, we'll get ourselves added to the policy, but we'll also make sure that the previous homeowners are listed under additional insured, because if the previous homeowners aren't on there, that's one of the biggest things that could potentially, give a hint to the lender that something's going on, and it could potentially cause them to call the due on sale clause or issue the due on sale clause.
So, this is a major concern for people who are hearing this strategy and they're like, I don't know about this, but you are putting a lot of protections in place. And I love that. But what would happen? Worst case scenario, if the loan is called, that they think something's going on here, what would happen in that situation?
Yep. So, worst case scenario, and I'll kind of back up a little bit. So a lot of times too, and I just want to give people peace of mind, a lot of these lenders, as long as they're getting paid and they're getting their money, to be honest with you, many of them do not worry about it for the most part.
Exactly.
For the most part. But like you said, Jen, worst case scenario, maybe you're dealing with a smaller bank, smaller lender, whatever it is, and they're not having that. Worst case, if they do call it, we have additional things in place. So for example, if we have to, we work with hard money lenders. So typically we're buying these houses at a good enough deal where, if for whatever reason something happens and we need to get a hard money loan, then boom, we'll just get a hard money loan instead and just buy it outright. Okay. So that's always kind of a little backup plan that we have in case that potentially happens.
And to back up even further, what is a perfect situation for a subject to? Like if you're talking to sellers, what's something that they would say that you would trigger that this would be a good fit for them to do a subject to deal?
Yep. So typically one of the things that I look for is, so often, and this is typically the case with subject twos, people are behind. For the most part, we do this a lot with people that are in pre-foreclosure. So they're behind on their payments. They've been behind for several months. So if I run across someone that owes, maybe $15,000, $20,000 or something like that or less, that could potentially be a good subject to deal. And we have the conversation with them and let them know how this would benefit them. Like, hey, if you leave your mortgage in place, then we'll keep making payments on your behalf. I know your credit has tanked, the last couple months, but this is going to be a way for us to help you improve your credit. And then also too, when we talk to some of the homeowners and they tell us like, hey, I'm just looking to try and get out of this as quickly as possible. If I could walk away with something, sometimes like a lot of people, because their backs are against the wall, they just want to get rid of this problem. So some of them don't care about getting a ton of money. It's like, hey, if I could just get this thing off my hands and just not have that foreclosure on my record. So I'll listen for different things like that. Hey, we just want to get rid of this thing. We just want to avoid the foreclosure, or hey, we're willing to walk away with $5,000-$10,000 or something like that. So I'll try and ask them what it is that they're looking for. We do run across some people that have very unrealistic expectations sometimes. And, that's kind of how, all right, maybe this isn't, going to work out. But typically those are some of the things, just a low reinstatement, as they call it. So the amount that I need to pay to catch up the mortgage. And then also too, just them expressing like, hey, we'd be fine walking away with, 5, 10K, whatever it is, something that's realistic.
And that's helping them get established in a new place, and maybe they're going to rent from now on or something. So I love that. And we as real estate investors, it's a great opportunity to go out there. And just as I said in your introduction, you are dedicated to providing solutions to homeowners in distress. And this is a perfect situation where you can put on your superhero's cape and go in and really help out a family in need. So love that. What is the advantage to you as the real estate investor to do a subject to deal?
Yep. So oftentimes it's less money that I have to bring to closing. So typically, I know sometimes with, hard money lenders, not that they can't close quickly, but a lot of times you have to go through a process. You have to provide them documents, and with the points, fees, and all that stuff that they're going to charge you, sometimes you do have to come up with a good chunk of money to close. So buying it subject to, as long as I can order the reinstatement from the lender and title's ready to go, I can generally move through that process a lot quicker. So just the speed of being able to get the transaction completed. Also too, a lot of times less money that I have to bring to closing. And because a lot of times too, when we run across these subject to deals, people have purchased these properties years and years ago. And so the interest rate is super low. I think the house that we just got, it was 3.625 or something like that.
Wow.
And so their payment, while their particular payment is a little bit higher, a lot of times the payment for the property is fairly inexpensive versus what I would have to pay right now with where current interest rates are. So that then allows me to potentially keep that property as a rental, and I'm going to be cash flowing probably way more than I would have had I had to get another loan under my name with where interest rates are currently.
So does it concern you to hold on to that mortgage with the risk of getting it called? If you keep it as a buy and hold, like the longer you hold on to it, that would make me nervous. I would want to get it into my name as soon as possible. But I love that, man, you can cash flow, fix it up a little bit, start cash flowing, and you're still only paying that teeny tiny little mortgage. So does that concern you at all, of risk of getting called, the loan called?
In the very beginning, when I was doing all this, girl, I was super scared. But I think that's the thing with anything. You know what I'm saying? When you don't know what to expect, like you're just super nervous. But now that I've done a couple and I have a few under my belt, like I'm not as nervous anymore, just because I have learned about the different things that lenders look for. So as long as I'm taking those measures to make sure that I'm not drawing any additional attention, but I do have my backup plan just in case something happens, I'm not as concerned anymore. But you're absolutely right. I could understand and see why someone would want to get that moved and into their name as soon as possible, just to avoid, any issues.
And you introduced me to the concept of putting in a land trust. That is genius. And then calling it the address. So you have done a lot of research on this. I love that. That was a very, very good nugget. So thank you for sharing that. So you posted recently, you got this property under, well, you have it now. And I keep saying under contract. It's not under contract. You own it now.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So tell us how you found this deal. This was a very lengthy process. So how did you find it?
Yep. So for the most part with my business, we do a lot of text blasts. So we're sending out text messages to homeowners in all sorts of situations, but we do focus a lot, on pre-foreclosures. And anytime we get a lead with pre-foreclosures, Jen, girl, we're on those, because those are probably some of the lowest hanging fruit, very motivated. And so we message these guys. So actually we use a program called REI Reply. And so instead of us having to individually message all these homeowners on a daily basis, because after a while your list starts to accumulate, you add more and more. The great thing about REI Reply is that you can create drip campaigns. And so with drip campaigns, I can essentially go into this program and create 30 different messages, let's say as an example, where I am messaging these homeowners maybe twice a day on the first day, once on the third day, 2 times on the 5th day. So you can kind of create a schedule. And so it just consistently, again, drips on them. And ultimately, a lot of times, Jen, like these guys end up responding. Like we've had responses after like 15, 20 messages. So it really shows you that the success comes from follow-up. Like you have to follow up so many times because these homeowners are getting blown up by people like calling, texting, letters in the mail and different things like that. So that's essentially how we got introduced to these guys initially. drip campaign. They responded. And so we had scheduled a call with them, or actually my virtual assistant scheduled a call. My virtual assistant is the one that kind of keeps track of all the messages coming in, responds back to the homeowners. And if they're interested in having a conversation, she then books an appointment for me and puts it on my calendar.
Nice.
So yeah, so she booked an appointment. I had the call with the homeowner, and after we talked and I gathered some of the details, that's then when I was kind of identifying like, man, this might potentially be a pretty decent subject too. After listening to some of the things that they mentioned, the homeowner actually told me immediately, like, hey, we're just looking for 10K to walk away with. And I was like, okay, all right, that's reasonable. That's not bad.
What was their situation?
So they had gotten behind a couple months back. So I think the couple is also kind of going through they're separated basically. So the husband was working up here in construction. I think things had slowed down. And so he had moved from the Dallas-Fort Worth area to Austin to work on multifamily apartments and stuff like that. And then the wife was working up here for the school district. And so, yeah, I think one, they're kind of, separating, but also two, job change for him. They, weren't making the same amount of money that they were making before. And so that's what ultimately kind of got them in that situation with getting behind.
All right. So break down the numbers for us. What did they owe? How much were they behind? And how did you put that all together?
Yep. And so working with lenders sometimes, Jen, let me tell you, you have to have so much patience. And I've worked with several lenders. This has probably been one of the worst ones. And the reason I say that is because typically whenever you reach out to these lenders and you request the reinstatement, so the document that you need that tells you, hey, this is how much is needed total in order to catch up the loan, bring it current and in good status. It includes attorney's fees, all of that stuff. So what we would do is that I got the homeowners to sign a loan authorization form. So with the loan authorization form, it basically just gives me authorization so I could call in, and ask any questions I have about the loan. And so I always get homeowners to sign this right at the very beginning so I could send this to the lender. So that way, anytime I have to call, I don't have to get the homeowners on the line, in order to be able to ask the lender a question.
Smart. Very smart.
Yep. And so initially I got the homeowner to order a reinstatement, just on their own. It takes several days to generate. It's kind of annoying. I don't know why it takes 5 to 7 days to generate, some numbers, but hey, I guess that's above me. But we got the first reinstatement, right? And Jen, by the time we got this thing, we had 1 day to make a payment. Otherwise, it was already expired. And the reinstatement that we received didn't have any per diem. So if you go over that date, typically on these documents, they say, hey, it'll be an additional, $50 or whatever it is per day, after this date of the expiration date. And so it didn't have that at all. And so we kept having to order new reinstatements because, again, by the time we received it, or at least by the time the homeowner sent it to me, I literally had 1 day to get the payment made, and it just wasn't going to work. So ultimately, Jen, we had to order 3 different reinstatements in order to have the final numbers. And what ended up happening is that this home was supposed to go to foreclosure at the beginning of June. So Texas does their foreclosures and their auctions first Tuesday of the month. And so I was freaking out because it was the Monday before the auction and we were still waiting for the reinstatement. I think I had ordered it like Wednesday or Thursday the week before. And so it was Monday morning. And again, I was freaking out because I'm like, man, we don't have these numbers. And so I was just trying to think like, man, could I just send them some money based on the last reinstatement and be okay? But every single time I called them, they're like, no, if we don't get the exact amount, they're going to send you the check right back. And, it's not going to work out. So that morning, Jen, I called them again and, I tried to get someone on the line to see if they got the numbers, and they did. So it was a little over $25,000 for the reinstatement.
Okay.
Yep. And so the reinstatement document tells you how you can make the payment. So there were only 2 ways to make the payment. Number 1, you could send a payment through Western Union. Or number 2, you would have to send a cashier's check in the mail. And these guys were based in California. But again, I'm nervous because it's the Monday before the auction. The auction is the very next day at like 10 a.m. So it's like, how the heck was I going to do this? So I was at least just content that I got the number. So it was 25,000 and change. So I go to Western Union because I knew that if I sent it through there, that'd probably be the quickest way. Well, girl, I went to Western Union and it was just at, one of the grocery stores. I think it was Albertsons that I went to over here. And you can't send Western Union payment of over $5,000. That's their max. I was trying to ask them like, hey, could we separate this and do like, separate payments and stuff like that? And they're like, no, the system's going to kick it out. It's not going to let it happen. So I was like, are you kidding me? And so what I ended up doing is that, all right, option A is no longer an option. I got to transition to option B. So I had gotten the email address for the lender for their customer support group and everything like that. So I ended up going to Chase. I did get a cashier's check. I had them make a copy of it for me. So I had a copy of that. I went to UPS afterwards and I paid for overnight delivery to send this cashier's check. And I made sure to get a copy of the receipt and everything like that. So I took the copy of the cashier's check, the UPS receipt. After I sent it, I paid like $100 to send this thing overnight. And actually it still wasn't going to arrive in time. It was going to arrive at like 10 a.m. or 12 p.m. like their time or something like that. So like after the auction date or the auction time would have started here. But I sent an email to the lender, and also I had the trustee's information. So the trustee was essentially the foreclosure attorney that the lender was working with. So I had already been blowing them up as well. And actually, before I even went to Western Union that day, Jen, I actually drove about 40 minutes to the trustee or the attorney's office because I wanted to see like, hey, can I just make a payment, either in person, like cashier's check, whatever, just see what my options were. And when I got to the office, it was under construction. There was no one there. Yeah, they just had a phone number on there. And so I just kept blowing them up, trying to see what else I could do. And they were like, yeah, no, we can't take any payments unless we have prior written authorization from the lender that this is something that they're going to approve. So I'm like, great. But yeah, so again, going back to the receipts, I sent an email to the lender with a copy of both, so they had the tracking information, they have a copy of the check, and then I included the trustee in there as well, sent that out. And then after I sent that out, I called the lender to give them a heads up, like, hey, this is on its way. This is the tracking information, just so you guys know. And then I called also the trustee or the attorney's office, gave them a heads up too, like, hey, I just sent in this email. You guys are getting, the funds. I just want to make sure it's going to be taken off from the foreclosure list for, tomorrow. Well, I didn't get confirmation that day, Jen, that any of this was going to happen. So again, I had just sent a check for $25,000 to this lender in California, not knowing if this foreclosure was going to be stopped or not. So I was like freaking out inside, like just praying, please let this work. So very next morning, Tuesday, these guys open up at 9 a.m. I'm on the phone calling the lender immediately. So I called the lender and they had told me that, hey, we actually don't see that there's an active foreclosure date on this thing. I'm like, yes. And then I called the trustee just to make sure that they were on the same page as well, because just because something pops up on the lender's side doesn't mean that it's always clearly communicated to the attorney. Like it could still sometimes end up going to auction for whatever reason. So I made sure to call the attorney as well, talk to them, and they're like, hey, it's been pulled off the list. And that's when I was finally breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah. Real estate is never boring. I will tell you that. Oh my goodness. So let me ask this question. Where are you contractually in this deal? Have you closed on it yet? Have you or this is the payment to close on it? What's going on with the contracts at this point?
Yep. So because I made the payment outside of closing, like I didn't do this through a title company. Usually if we had enough time, you are submitting, all of these funds to the title company, and a title company is the one that's sending it out on your behalf, to the lender, right, and all that stuff. But again, because we were running against time and everything, I just made sure that, I took care of that. So after we got confirmation that the foreclosure was postponed, I let my title company know. And in addition to the 25K, I also had to bring about 15K to the closing table because I needed to pay the homeowners 10,000, and also we had closing costs and things like that associated as well. So that was what I actually did through the title company. So I then had to pay the 15. So total, we were all in for about 40K for everything.
Okay, which leads me to my next question. How did you finance this?
So with this one, and actually a lot of my deals, Jen, I end up working with private lenders that fund a lot of my deals. So I'll have people that I have relationships with, either that I know through maybe real estate groups that I'm in, or maybe, retreats that I go to in Mexico and
That's right.
Stuff like that. So anywhere you go, or, people that they might have some funds just kind of hanging out in their savings account, or maybe an IRA, not doing anything. And so I typically get a lot of private lenders to fund my deals. But I'll be honest with you, Jen, I do keep funds in my own account in case, maybe I don't have a private lender lined up for when I need it, to close and stuff like that. So actually for this particular deal, I did use my own funds initially to close, but I have a private lender lined up that's actually giving me 60,000. So I'm going to get back the 40K that I put in initially. And then also we're going to have about 15 to about 20 K that we're going to put in for repairs. So basically I'm getting everything funded ultimately through one of my private lenders, but I did initially use my own funds just because time was, of the essence.
Wow.
So.
And how are you securing their funds? Are you doing just a promissory note? Are you putting them in the land trust? How is their funding secured?
Yep. So typically we do create a note. I do a personal guarantee and stuff like that. And we do file a deed of trust. So they do have a lien against the property. So that is what secures their investment.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, I would have given up. If they said, oh no, the foreclosure is going through tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, sorry, can't help you. You have like the gusto to keep this going. And I love it. And I'm sure these people are truly grateful. So tell me the financials of the house. What is the house worth currently? And again, because you own it now, you're working on renovations. What is the ARV, the after repair value for this property?
Yep. So they owed about $245,000 on the house. So that's the mortgage that I took over. And again, like I mentioned, we're probably going to put about 15 to 20K into the house for repairs. We've actually already done foundation work. So the house was actually renovated by an investor a couple of years ago. And that's when the homeowners or the previous homeowners purchased it. But the addition that they had done to the back was actually pulling away from the house.
Oof.
So I've spent already about $7,000 for foundation. So we have a couple big ticket items. So foundation, roof, and then also we have just a little bit interior items that we need to address. So with the roof issues that we've had, there was some water that kind of got in. So we just have some drywall repair and different things like that we have to do. But yeah, I'm probably going to be spending, like I mentioned, about 15, 20K to get everything up to speed. And then we are actually, and this is why as an investor, you have to be very flexible and always have backup plans and be able to pivot. So I'll be honest with you, Jen, initially with this house, I wanted to keep it as a rental. It's in a great school district, great area, corner lot. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath. So really, really good area. But the thing is, the mortgage that I took over, these guys, it's about $2,340 on a monthly basis. So in order for me to be able to cash flow, but also too, I mentioned earlier that I have a private lender that is, going to be in the deal. Typically for my private lenders that invest in rental properties, after I rent them, I'm paying my private lenders on a monthly basis their interest.
Right.
So if I have to factor in $2,340 for the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, all that stuff, then also factor every month what I'm going to be paying my private lender, plus be able to cash flow, I'm gonna have to rent this thing out for, $3,000, if not, more. So I'm still kind of going back and forth. So I haven't 100% decided, but because I think that my rental pool is going to be a lot smaller, like typically at $3,000, if you can pay that on a monthly basis, you're almost better off buying
Right.
a home. So yeah, so I think one of the things that we're going to do is pivot, and instead of, keeping it as a rental, we're just going to fix it up and we're going to sell it. So we're waiting to do all the other repairs only because we just closed on it a couple weeks ago. And if we are going to sell it, let's say to a FHA buyer, typically with FHA, once title transfers, you have to wait 90 days in
Right.
order to be able to resell a house and, not have any issues with, that lender. And so I don't want to rush and, do all this work and have all this money stuck in this deal, not be able to do anything. So we're probably going to wait maybe at least another month before we finish everything up, and then we'll put it on the market, and game plan is to sell it. And for this one, after repair value, ARV should be about 330 or so.
Nice.
Yeah. So after closing costs, holding costs, the interest I'm going to be paying my private lender and stuff like that, we should be netting, about 30 or so, maybe more. But I'm very conservative when it comes to my figures.
Oh, yes. And listeners, make sure you are conservative too. That's a very important nugget right there. So you're all in for around how much?
So 245 was the payment or the mortgage that we took over. We're going to put in 20K for repairs. And then again, we have holding costs. So we're paying this mortgage every single month, $2,300, $40. So yeah, so holding costs. So yeah, so we're going to be in it, I think. And actually, it's funny because I come up with like a little spreadsheet of like all my figures. So that's one of the things, Jen, that I've learned since I've started doing this. I come up with a little spreadsheet of everything. So that way I can see at the end what my exact numbers are going to be and everything that I'm going to be into the, the project for. But
that's so unlike a financial person to do that.
Oh man. Yeah, but no, at the end of the day, I think about 290, maybe 300. And again, it all depends on how long we end up holding this house for. Just because last year houses were flying off the market. We were getting offers, immediately. And now things have slowed down a little bit. So I always factor in, at least a couple months that we might be holding on to this thing. 'Cause I don't know. But yeah, we'll probably be in, I think 290, maybe 300. So net, if we sell it for, 330. That is also including the realtor's commission and stuff like that as well. I always factor that in.
Maria, you are such a badass. And not only are you great at what you do, but you're great at explaining what you do as well. And you do have such an educator brain in your head, and you explain things so well. You've taught me. I'm totally checking out the land trust if I come across another subject too. That is brilliant. And you're the first person to explain that one to me. So Maria, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge about subject 2. And by the way, listeners, a lot of people call it sub 2, but this is really subject 2. So, and it's TO, not TOO. I see that, or the number 2. So thank you, Maria, for that. The second part of the podcast is what makes you a badass. And I use the acronym BADASS. And the first letter is B for book. What is a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
Yep. So earlier I mentioned mindset, and I got a mindset coach a couple years ago. And so one of the books that we read over and over again is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So that's been a really, really good one.
Very nice. Who is your coach, by the way?
So his name's BP, Brian Ponciano. He is based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And he has a podcast that he does. And then we meet like weekly through Zoom, because it's like, just like you go to the gym regularly, if you want to see results, it's something that you constantly have to, be doing. And so weekly, we're always meeting, talking either about the book and just different things that we're already kind of programmed based on the environment that we're in, how we were raised and how we grew up. And so, we have to unprogram a lot of these things if we want to get to where it is that we're trying to get to sometimes.
And I love that you are investing in yourself, because there's listeners out there thinking, I can do this on my own, but having a mindset coach, BP, shout out to BP, it's just accelerating your business even faster though, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Exactly.
Super important to keep investing in yourself. Thank you for sharing that. All right. The first A in badass is for advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yep. So this also came from my mindset coach too. So it's a saying that he tells us all the time, and I forget who actually said it, but how you do anything is how you do everything. And so
Yes.
I've kept this in my mind, and I try and be, consistent with how I do everything. Essentially, I always try and show up, give everything my best, and yeah, that's one that stuck with me.
Yes, you do, sister. I'm telling you, you impress me all the time. So you definitely have that. All right. The D in badass is for drive. What drives Maria to be successful?
Yep. So what's really interesting, Jen, I came here to the United States from the Dominican Republic when I was like 4 years old. And I am just so thankful for all the opportunities that I've come across and how my life has turned out, just because I actually have a cousin that was born the day after me. So we're one day apart. But the thing is, she stayed in the Dominican Republic. And because my grandmother came here, she requested my mom come here. My dad ended up coming. I came. My life is completely different, because my parents decided to get out of their comfort zones and go to a country that they didn't know the language, they didn't have any money. You know what I'm saying? So I just admire that so much. And I want to be able to take advantage of all opportunities that come my way, just because I feel like they made, this crazy sacrifice for me. So again, I'm just so thankful. So that's kind of what drives me, like the sacrifices my grandmother made and then my parents made to get me here, because my life is completely different because of the choices that they made.
Wow, I love that. And what a legacy they left. That is fantastic. All right, the second A in badass is for aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. My current goal is to do 6,000 steps a day. I know that's not, but I feel like my watch doesn't catch every single step. So like if I had a different one, it'd be 10,000 steps. Anyway, I'm a big goal setter. So what is a current goal you are working on?
Yep. So I have so many, it's crazy, but I added 10 doors to my rental portfolio last year. So my goal for this year is to add 24. And girl, I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish these things. Sometimes you just got to throw stuff out there. And when you do, your brain starts focusing on it more and more, and you find a way to do it. So that's been one of the goals I've been trying to work on, adding more doors. But ultimately, with the pre-foreclosure stuff that we're doing, primarily we kind of just focus on Texas. But my goal is to see if we can expand that and kind of almost do it nationwide, because we've gotten pretty good, at how to do a lot of this stuff. And I feel like, we can help a lot of people. We actually help a lot of people, Jen, in keeping their houses. We don't always, like with these pre-foreclosures, if someone has an opportunity to keep their home, we're not going to tell them that they have to sell their house if there's a way for them to do that. So I don't know. I feel like, we get this feel good, feeling too by helping these people keep their homes. But the more people we help, ultimately we end up getting more of what we want to.
Absolutely.
So.
Very good karma to spread out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my goodness. I love that. All right. By the way, for your rentals, what's your sweet spot? Do you like single family homes or do you like multifamily? What do you look for rentals?
Yeah. So for the most part, all of mine are single family. So I have a couple duplexes, with Warren and some in Cleveland. But yeah, single family for the most part. I do want to transition to multifamily. And that's why I've tried to get mentors in that area. So it's definitely, on the path. And I'm trying to be like you, girl. So slowly but surely.
Oh my goodness. Well, my mentor for multifamily is Tim Bratz, and he spoke at the conference that you and I were at in Cancun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
yep.
So shout out to him. I just stepped away from his program for a little while just to kind of get caught up on some finances, but he was a fantastic mentor, and his whole program was fantastic as far as networking and everything. So definitely check him out. All right. Mm-hmm. The first S in badass is for systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
Yep. So I think the biggest thing is leveraging a team. So I've had my main virtual assistant for almost 3 years now. She's awesome. She helps me with everything marketing. She'll pull up lists, schedule appointments and things like that. And also she helps me with property management. So many different things. So I'm very appreciative of my
Where's she located? Where's she?
She's in the Philippines.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I think too, just some of the programs that we use, like earlier, how I mentioned, REI Reply and just like that drip campaign, that is probably the biggest, tool that we have, just because it would take us so much time, again, if we were individually reaching out to all these homeowners, because we're uploading, hundreds and hundreds of people sometimes on a daily basis, because we're getting lists, for everything. Like I mentioned, pre-foreclosures, we're doing code violations, evictions, divorce, all sorts of stuff. So that program is probably the biggest help, because again, it consistently reaches out to these homeowners, so we don't have to do a lot of the work. If anything, my virtual assistant just needs to kind of stay on top of the responses. Anyone that's interested, she'll schedule an appointment. I'll talk to them, and we'll kind of go from there.
Boom. And the reason why I asked where she was is because a lot of people are like, I don't want someone in the Philippines that doesn't speak English, but they have an amazing group of trainers, and so anyway, I love that you are providing a good future for her as well by giving her some financial freedom as well. So bravo to you. All right, to wrap this up, the final S in badass is for success. What does success mean to you?
Yep. So success to me means doing what you love with the people that you love when you want to do it. And it's interesting because a lot of people think like, oh, I have to, be an entrepreneur, or I have to be able to set my own schedule. You don't have to do that. If success to you is, hey, I have, my steady job, I get to spend as much time with my family, as I can, we do this and we do that, then that's success right there. So I don't let, other people kind of determine what success, and I hope other people don't. Like, you don't have to be a full-time, investor or entrepreneur in order for you to be successful. You could be successful right where you're at with what you're doing. So that's what success to me means. And I mean, I've transitioned and I've pivoted just because of the different things that, I've experienced, and that's why I've gotten to this level. But, I've always kind of been content with where I've been at. And I mean, I've always considered myself successful for that reason.
Well, I agree 1,000%. And this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot from this episode. I'm sure the listeners have learned a lot. If they want to learn more from you, how can they find you?
Yep. So I'm on Instagram, so you can send me a message. It's lady_hustle23, or find me on Facebook, Maria Acosta. Those are probably two biggest ones.
Do you have any websites?
So actually it's funny because so many people, Jen, have been reaching out to me about, hey, I want to learn how to, fix and flip. And like, I never really thought about like being an educator or doing anything like that, just because I always thought that I didn't have enough experience, because I was comparing myself to, mentors and other people that I followed. But it's funny though, just because people that have never done, their first deal, looking at someone that's done 10, 15, 20, 30 deals, like, you could truly make a big difference in that person's life, just because I feel like they can relate to you more. Sometimes some of these mentors and people that we see on TV and stuff like that, it's like they're so far ahead.
They're so untouchable.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, it's like you can't relate. And sometimes they even forgot, like, man, how, like, the little, things that they went through in that journey that maybe someone that's brand new, like they can't relate. So I came up with a little fix and flip course, just kind of showing everyone my process, and it's called the Real Estate Academy. So
nice.
What is it? My website, I think it's www.themariaacosta.com/REA. So Real Estate Academy. So that talks a little bit about the flipping course. Yeah.
Good for you. And I am so glad you're doing that, because, you've been doing this longer than I have. So you have educated me. Again, that whole land trust is just massive to help protect your asset. And I think you are doing a disservice by not sharing your amazing brain power that you have going on in there. So you inspire me, and I'm sure you will inspire many. So Maria, thank you so much for being on today's show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jen. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And that is all. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery, and don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.